Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing what I believe to be the most impactful move update for the Open Master League, and that is the buff to Fire Fang on Reshiram. Reshiram previously saw some anti-meta play using Dragon Breath, Fusion Flare, and Draco Meteor, but now with Fire Fang, Reshiram competes in a new way. It's a dragon type that has the ability to beat almost every fairy in the format, and since Dragon Breath and Fire Fang have the same stats per turn, a lot of its neutral matchups, like against the Veltal, are unchanged. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at a 9-3 run ahead to 2600 elo with Fire Fang Reshiram. Hopping into the first match, picking up a great lead leading into Zacian. Now this is a matchup where Reshiram can dominate. I'm very happy to tank a move here. I'm in no danger of getting knocked out. I'm going to look to overfarm here. Opponent is going to try and go for a catch onto a Shadow Rhyperior, but I'm able to hold on to my energy and bring in Tapu Bulu. Now Reshiram, of course, with Fire Fang is going to do a lot worse into the waters like Palkia and Kyogre, so that's why we do have two fairy types in the back that have coverage into waters. So that way it can cover for the change in coverage on Reshiram. Opponent is going to be bringing in their final Pokemon, and it's revealed to be a Veltal. Nature's Madness is going to connect, dealing some pretty significant damage. I farm up quite a bit with Tapu Bulu, and now I can send in Zacian. Opponent is going to bring in their own, but they are just so far behind on energy in this moment, and I can tank whatever they throw here. I'm still very healthy. They go for the Wild Charge. It does end up being a CMP tie. We are both running the Best Buddy boost equipped. Wild Charge is going to KO, and at this point, I just have way too much energy on all of my Pokemon. I have a move on the Zacian, I have a move on Reshiram, and I'm one off the move on Tapu Bulu. They only have 2 shields, so they know they're not going to be able to win, so to save themselves time, they're just going to let them move through. We've got some spice from the opponent in the next match, leading Reshiram into Shadow Mewtwo. Psystrike hits every single Pokemon on my team for a ton of neutral damage, so I am absolutely going to be shielding up Reshiram. I will fire off the Fusion Flare before they're able to make Psystrike number 2. Now Shadow Mewtwo inflicts massive damage, but as a trade-off, it is so frail that it looks like I can double shield and farm down with Fire Fangs, and they won't even make it to a third move. So now I exit with energy, and I'm very healthy. In comes Rhyperior, and I'm just going to pivot out into Zacian. Zacian farming up a ton of energy, Rhyperior farming up as well. I make it to the double close combats, and I believe that is a CMP tie from the opponent, and I will not get my second move. However, I'm pretty close to a Draco Meteor on the Reshiram, so I'm still feeling like I'm in a pretty decent position. I can now bring in Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu will get absolutely smacked with a Rock Record, but I am able to hang on. Look to farm up as much as I can. In the back is going to be a Dragonite, and Dragonite, trainer, I am so sorry. It is getting Draco Meteor. That's going to be a full one-hit KO. Rhyperior is going to get a full farm down, but bad news for Rhyperior. They lose the charge attack priority tie to Tapu Bulu. That's why I banked the move. We've got a massive overkill Solar Beam to secure that win. Picking up a slightly negative lead in the next match, Reshiram versus Kyogre. 2 better responses in the back, so I am going to look to immediately save switch out of here and send in Zacian. Zacian immediately hit with the Surf, and I have so much energy. I want to keep this Zacian healthy. So I am going to throw 1 quick attack and the Wild Charge, making sure to throw on good timing. Wild Charge is going to connect massive damage to Kyogre. Kyogre is going to stay in, and they're going to get fully quick attack farm down. So I exit with a ton of energy. What is the opponent going to be sending in here? They bring in Dialga. I will fire off the close combat. I'm expecting them to switch to try and catch, so I switch into the Reshiram, but the opponent actually does not make a pivot out to try and catch. So I did misread the situation a little bit there, but I'm able to make it to a Fusion Flare. I grab a shield from the opponent, and now this is a bit of an interesting situation. I know Zacian loses charge attack priority, so there's no point in throwing my move. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go for the free quick attack, look to farm up as much as I can, and now hopefully I can make it to a move versus whatever they have in the back. Close combat is going to pick up the knockout in the back. It's going to be Primarina, and this game is over, and the opponent will concede the match. Hopping into the next match, Reshiram versus Dragonite. Bad lead. I'm going to save switch into Zacian. Out comes a Metagross, and what season is this? we have a metagross on our screen. When I saw the typing, I thought it was going to be Duskmane. Duskmane honestly would have been preferred in this situation. Metagross, not what I was expecting to see whatsoever. Metagross is going to be hit with a wild charge. They are going to no-shield Zacian, trying to get to another move, but I was worried they were going to fire off their next Meteor Mash. So I throw the wild charge a bit early, and that means I don't get a third move. In comes Reshiram. Earthquake, not the greatest move ever, so I will let it go. That is going to connect. I get the Fire Fang down, and it's all up to Tapu Bulu to try and sweep. In the back, it's an Ursauna, and I only see one win con. I'm farming up. They do survive a Grass Knot. I'm going for the Solar Beam. They do not respect it. They get one hit KO'd, losing so much energy, and this game is just over. I fire off the Nature's Madness. That would do quite a bit of damage. They end up shielding the first, which is a definite misplay on their part, as the second one, of course, will do more. But either way, this game was over. I can switch in the Reshiram, because Reshiram will get a little bit of extra damage, and will be able to pick up the knockout, courtesy of Nature's Madness. Down goes the Dragonite, and we escape with a win in a game that we probably should not have won. Hopping to the next match, Reshiram versus Mewtwo, a lead we've seen before, but this time it is the regular Mewtwo, and it looks like regular Mewtwo does actually have the bulk to guarantee that it lands a Psystrike in this matchup. So I will let the first one through. Opponent is now going to send in Rhyperior. Quick switch out of the Reshiram, and in comes Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu is going to be committing the shield. Versus Rhyperior is definitely where it would be very nice to have Grass Knot. Of course, I don't have Grass Knot. I am running the Solar Beam, and my opponent does make a good play to call that. They are able to make it to a second Rock Wrecker, which is really unfortunate, as I'm forced to go down both shields. And going down both shields against the Mewtwo is really not going to go well. I'm going to be firing off Nature's Madness. I'm able to grab a shield from my opponent, but I can't get to the second Nature's Madness. Mewtwo's residual energy comes in clutch as it picks up the knockout. In comes Reshiram. In the back is Palkia. And with double nuke moves on Zacian, I can't win this endgame, so I will concede the match. Picking up a pretty nice lead in the next match, Reshiram versus Veltal. We do have identical pacing in this matchup, but Reshiram, of course, with the significantly better stats, is going to win the CMP tie. Fusion Flare, not going to pick up a KO, but that does a ton of damage. Oblivion Wing wouldn't KO either, but I do want to preserve health on the Reshiram. Opponent is going to save switch into Zacian. Zacian, I'm going to fire off the Fusion Flare, and then I can look to bring in my own Zacian. Fusion Flare is going to be shielded by my opponent, and now we are in the mirror. Opponent fires off energy, and I'm always going to be no shield in the first. They are going to go for a wild charge. A second wild charge would not KO. I do actually win the CMP tie here. Shout out to the best buddy badge on the Zacian. Opponent does end up committing the shield, and that's very okay for me. They go for the wild charge. They actually undercharge it to get a little bit of extra farm. A nice play by my opponent. And I'm going to bring in Tapu Bulu. Opponent is going to send in Necrozma. Unfortunately, my switch clock is not yet up, so I am forced to fire off the Nature's Madness just to burn the timer. And now I can send in Reshiram, and let's let Fire Fang get to work. They will go for the Dark Pulse. They're going to try and make it to Dark Pulse number 2, but the Fire Fangs do way too much damage. And now, are they going to be sending back in that Zacian? If so, I need to throw my move. In comes the Zacian, and unfortunately, I didn't click the Fusion Flare in time. Close combat will KO. In comes the Veltal, but a Veltal will very cleanly be outpaced here. I'm able to make it to the Nature's Madness. I could even throw on 4 here because they were desynced by a turn due to the switch in. Back in comes the Zacian, and Zacian's getting KO'd with the Nature's Madness as well. So even though I accidentally didn't throw my Fusion Flare, the game will still end in a win. Great lead in the next match, Reshiram into Zacian, and it is the shiny Zacian as well. And look at the Fire Fangs, this thing is already at half HP. I am going to be firing off the Fusion Flare. Opponent will commit the shield, and I know that I can tank whatever they throw and be in no danger of ever being farmed down. So I will no shield as they go for the close combat. I'm going to shield up close combat number 2, and they will have to switch out, or I can get a Fire Fang farm down. There's a switch out into Dialga. I decide to bank a Fusion Flare for later and send in Zacian. I could potentially farm up to the back-to-back close combats, but Dialga does win CMP over Zacian, so they're not going to let me get a second move anyway. So I figured I may as well take the damage that I can get, and I actually have a bit of a fun play in mind. Because they're so low, I'm actually going to go for a 1-shield full Bullet Seed farm down with Tapu Bulu. They go for the Iron Head. I'm going to get the farm down as well. They're going to panic switch out into a Waterfall Primarina. and no baits here. I'm going straight for the solar beam. Do they respect it? The answer is no. Down goes Primarina. In comes Zacian. Zacian would get KO'd by the Nature's Madness, so my opponent will be forced to shield. And now I throw one just to not snipe on predictable timing. Fusion Flare will easily KO what's left of the Zacian, and all that's left is 1 HP on the dialga, and we're able to take the win. Hopping into the next match, Reshiram into Duskmane, an amazing lead. This is a great spot to be. Opponent safe switches into a Veltal, and I respond with Zacian. Arguably, this is a bit of a misplay on my part. What I should do in this instance is I should stay in with the Reshiram, Fusion Flare to grab a shield, and then go Zacian. Because I'm a little bit unused to running double nukes, and if you run double nukes, if they land an Oblivion Wing after you debuff yourself, you actually can't get to a third wild charge. I wasn't 100% sure of that fact. So if I could have played this battle again, I would have chipped with the Fusion Flare or grabbed the shield and then brought in the Zacian and been in a much better spot. But now I've lost switch advantage, which means my Tapu Bulu will be aligned onto Duskmane. That's a terrible matchup, so I may as well throw away the Tapu Bulu and just try and sweep with Reshiram. Reshiram, up a shield and up energy is very powerful. In the back is going to be Kyogre, and I'm going to need to make it to a Draco Meteor. I farm up as much as I can and fire off the Draco Meteor. Please KO, and they live on 1 HP. Oh no. Oh my goodness, that is very unfortunate. I'm now -2 attack. In comes a Veltal. A Veltal, unfortunately, I'm forced to throw a move because they would get to an Oblivion Wing. Fusion Flare is going to pick up the knockout. In comes Necrozma. I need to make it to the Fusion Flare. I cannot get there. That was a very winnable game, but unfortunately misplays by me cost me switch advantage and the game. We move to the next match, the second Ursauna that I've seen today. Ursauna, of course, did get a buff with Ice Punch. Overall, Ursauna would still really love a new fast move. I'm going to bank a little bit of energy after grabbing a shield and send in Zacian. They're not switching out, and they farmed up a ton of energy. I decide to shield in case they have high horsepower, and that shield call is rewarded as they do in fact have the move. Now, I'm going to fire off the close combat. They're going to let that through. They get KO'd. In comes Primarina. My defense is heavily debuffed, but I still get the double up on the Wild Charge. Zacian, an absolute beast. Wild Charge is going to be shielded. I wait the turn to make sure they don't catch, and now I guarantee that the Wild Charge finds its mark and picks up the KO. In the back is Tapu Bulu. They're getting Fire Fang down, and the opponent will concede the match. A familiar lead and a welcome lead in the next match, leading into another Zacian. Again, this is just a great spot to be as the Reshiram. We do way more fast move pressure to them than they do to us. They're already into the yellow, and I will throw the Fusion Flare on the CMP tie to the back-to-back close combat. I can always tank the first, so I am going to let it go. Opponent went for a Wild Charge, expecting a catch attempt onto something that would have resisted close combat, but I didn't go for it, so instead, their play backfires as I don't take a lot of damage on Reshiram. They send in Dialga. Here, I'm going to try the back-to-back close combats, but any competent opponent will just click the Iron Head, realizing I'm at the back-to-back moves, and be able to deny that energy. Either way, should still be fine, as this is playing out pretty similarly to an earlier match. I'm just going to go for a one-shield Bullet Seed farm down with Tapu Bulu, and trust that that energy will be valuable. So I will commit the shield on the Iron Head. Opponent is going to switch out into Zacian. Zacian immediately met with an undercharged Nature's Madness. That undercharge leaves them at 1 HP, setting up an extra Bullet Seed to farm, the perfect undercharge. And now what are they going to bring in? They're going to bring in Rhyperior. Oh no. Rhyperior going to be now met with the Nature's Madness. Nature's Madness into Rhyperior is going to be shielded. Opponent farming up a ton of energy. I send in the Reshiram, and Reshiram is now going to be KO'd by a Breaking Swipe. Oh, they actually go for a Rock Wrecker, as unfortunately I was not able to make it to the Draco Meteor. But they're debuffed, which means that this Nature's Madness will be able to pick up the knockout. In comes Dialga. They realize they can't make a move, and they will concede the match. Hopping into the final match, we're met with a pretty solid neutral lead, leading into a Veltal once again. Here, I'm going to farm up a ton of energy. I could have gone for the Fusion Flare, but knowing that it doesn't KO, instead, I'm going to look to overfarm to a point where the move would actually be lethal. They're going to save switch into another shiny Zacian, second one we've seen, and again, shiny Zacian is just an unbelievably good shiny. Fusion Flare absolutely rocks the opposing Zacian, but the issue that I have is it actually did not put it into farm down range. My opponent's going to get double Wild Charge. I don't really want to let this Zacian HP go, so I'm forced to go down 2 shields, and suddenly this final game is tilting away from me. This is not looking good. I have a ton of energy, and I'm gonna need it, as in the back is Enamorus. Enamorus now at 4 Fairy Winds, it's 5 Fairy Winds to a fly, so I am going to undertap the Wild Charge and be able to force the final shield. A switch and a combo instantly is too obvious, so I'm gonna throw 1 and now go for the combo. I don't see a switch out, so I was able to catch them in the middle of their 7th Fairy Wind. Opponent is going to fire off Fly. Fly will do some pretty significant damage. Reshiram hangs on 1 HP, dealing a little bit of extra damage. They should look to switch out of this instantly, so I'm going to bring in the Tapu Bulu. As Tapu Bulu is now going to be up a turn, I'm able to outpace the Yveltal, make it to a Nature's Madness. Nature's Madness is going to pick up the KO, and Enamorus gets bullet seeded down, and that's a good game. All in all, I think that the Fire Fang buff ends up being a tremendous one for Reshiram. Reshiram being a dragon type that can absolutely destroy basically every fairy type that is not named Primarina, and honestly has some even shield wins over the different Primarina movesets as well. So overall, I found it to be quite powerful in the sets that I did use it. Now, taking away Dragon Breath does mean that your coverage changes. Whereas before, you could pretty reliably count on Reshiram versus the waters. Now, Reshiram is going to be a liability versus the waters, so you need to cover for that. And that's part of why I did have the Wild Charge Zacian and the Tapu Bulu in the back. So if I did see something like a Palkia, I would have coverage in that regard. When it comes to the Master League, the Dragon field is an incredibly crowded one. There are so many different dragons to choose from. Arguably the best 3 are of course going to be Palkia, Dialga, and probably my least favorite Pokemon, and that is Zygarde. But I do really like seeing when dragons that are still very solid but not necessarily quite at that S tier level get additional play, and specifically when they have more of a unique niche. And being a dragon type that can absolutely clown on top meta threats like Xerneas and Zacian, in my view, is definitely something that is worth paying attention to. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.